I am the fifth horseman of the apocalypse. I am yourself. This is a smash hit at the parties. Hello, and I wanted to continue with my onslaught of videos. And so, right now, I wanted to address the concept of climate change. And so, I'm asking ChatGPT, is climate change real? And I already knew the answer to this question. I asked these questions to AI in a sort of innocent manner, you know. And yeah, half the time I am naive. And about using AI, that also can, stave off a lot of people. And then the problem with that is like, and this here I wasn't, planning on talking about this, but like, there's an interesting outer fringe meant of people who um, could wind up either not contributing or could be harming like our reality at large. And so the first outer fringe people are the extremely, dumb. Like we're talking like, sub level IQs. And I, on my videos, I pretty much target the mega base, like those people. And they're the climate deniers, and they're like the vaccine deniers. And you know, I remember telling a few of these fuckheads like, hey, uh, I got some iron lungs for sale. They're sitting in the warehouse here. Dust them off. Get them all shiny and clean, and let her rip. You know, so like we have that outer fringe of people, or you know, as Hillary Clinton called them, undesirables. You know, considering like what Trump has been saying about people who are not in alignment with him. You know, and what Stephen Miller is saying, that they are the enemy. They must be exterminated. In so many words like that. So yeah, they're undesirables. These people. And then there's the other extreme, and we're talking about not just above average people, but extremely intelligent, higher IQ people, to where they might just be doing some amazing math, but it's not even published in the peer-reviewed journals. They're just sort of like just kind of like they disappear, and and others are like trying to work out the theory of God, you know, and talk about it on social media, and like these are like so like these two groups of people, you know, they should get together and say, look, the extremely intelligent people should say we should get into politics, we should figure this shit out, and then get these dumbasses over here to do their bidding. Meanwhile, the rest of us can just enjoy our fucking lives. The rest of us common sense people. I don't know if that made too much of an argument, but it seems like using AI could be considered you know a lacking of intelligence, and by the same token, I think that it's I'm demonstrating how um, it's just a giant uh, database. And the thing is, um, it depends on what's put in the database. And yeah, there's probably some sticky fingers controlling what it's going to say, and that it's using algorithms to say it. But it's worth trying, and unless you have a photographic memory. But even then, it was like the idea is that you're posing a question to AI, and you get a whole battery of responses, and it brings you down these rabbit trails. And so that's what all this is about. So I'm asking if climate change is real, and it says obviously it says yes, and it goes into the overwhelming scientific evidence that shows that it's so, and it breaks it down. Global temperatures have risen, and they throw numbers, 1.2 to 1.3 Celsius since the late 1800s, with most warming occurring in recent decades. It has increased since the 1800s. And that's great to know, because if you think that it's just now, you know, with our hyper technologies, it's not true. Um, it probably has to do with um, like our presence. So you're talking 1800s, not the 1600s, not even the 1700s. So like just sort of taking a trip down memory lane, it's like that. Isn't that like, now we have the industrial revolution, and cities are getting, bigger and bigger and bigger. This is the late 1800s. So it's not like 1801. This is the late 1800s. So now you have your, factories, and, bigger collection of population, and centralized areas where people are leaving the rural lifestyle behind, and a lot of them are going into the city, throughout, all over the world, the civilized world, and um, you know, that's when our step into the modern age. I think 1800s is a very interesting period to study, and I would like to do that. I just know bits and pieces, and so you have that increase. So even when you have like numbers, some people they don't care, you know, and the greenhouse gases have increased. So carbon dioxide, concentrations have risen from about 280 per million, and that's what uh, parts per million (ppm) is. So if I say ppm, that's what I mean. Before the Industrial Revolution, to over 420 ppms today, largely due to human activities. So right there, I mentioned the Industrial Revolution. So you see how it all ties together, and so the reason why it's really good to know that this was starting to happen around the end of the 1800s, beginning of the 1900s, uh, is so that you can't just say that it's a conspiracy by the liberals or something like that. Melting ice, the glaciers are retreating worldwide. The Greenland and Antarctic ice sheets are losing mass, and Arctic sea ice has declined significantly. Hey, maybe that's why Trump wants to, take control of Greenland. So then he could, like, post all his like Fox satellites over there, like, these freaking, towers, Fox towers, and networks over there, and his truth talk bullshit, and like, yeah, there's no ice sheets melting over here. Um, my jab at my attempt at comedy. All right, but the sea levels are rising. So yeah, so I'm not going to even describe that. Weather patterns are changing. That's the good one right there. And so I want to mention that. So like, I'll come out and say it right now. I don't think there's a change of like earthquake activity, or the amount of earthquakes, rumbling, and stuff like that, since before the industrial revolution age, and now, or I guess it's still the industrial age, huh? Industrial revolution. Okay, I'm gonna like get lost in semantics or whatever. Um, and like, hold on to that, but like things involving like, you know uh rain, like rainfall, intense heat, and heavier rainfall, and then also intense heat waves, and the it's like you get these extremities of temperature, both on the cold and the warm, And your Rush Limbaughs would say, well, if we had global warming, we wouldn't have all that rain or all that, it wouldn't be cold over there. Um, and it's like, yeah, but look at where you're at, and talk to everybody, who's included in this whole attempt at helping and not hindering, where the communication is open. It's like, yeah, but it wasn't like this, blah, 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 blah. And so then you put it all together and you realize there is something moving and pushing and shifting around without being a meteorologist to get into the details. And so it is like there's more rain and, heavier heat wave, frequent, and just weird individual weather events going on, but the changes that are accumulating from that is causing a real problem. And we already know that it's like post industrial age, like approaching 1900, like late 1800s. Okay, so and then so like scientists, it's like boy, these guys are always getting a bad rap. It's like they're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't. And I sometimes run against some of the ideas that like mainstream, science talks about. Um, and that's something I want to get into either later. It's something about the imponderable nature of reality, and I don't know. It gets to be a real, you know, um, it can become a real bore. And so for these videos, I just want to like deal with things that I don't want to say are just measurable, but things that matter a greater large number of people, as opposed to things that just matter to the individual. Because a lot of times when you get into like we watch videos and whether it's I don't know anywhere. It's about how I have something for you so that you can have a better life, and that always points to making more money, you know, and it's always money and stuff like that, and then maybe love. Love is always subordinate to the money, and so it's mainly success and money, and that's increased. I mean, I think there was a lot of shenanigans going on, a lot of charlatans and snake oil salesmen and stuff going on since the beginning of mankind. And like as we approach the 60s and 70s, a lot of that stuff was focused on like looking good, feeling good, and finding the right partner. And then somehow it just metastasized from that. It changed from that to like as we approach the 80s and 90s, that's taken a back seat to like just making money and having stuff. And that's where we are. We're still there, and so there's this complete emphasis, thrown on that end of the wagon and or boat, and it's tilting, folks. It's like we're about to capsize. And so back to the climate change response. Scientists, they use so this the reason why it has to be real is because like they're using independent sources of evidence and they corroborate the evidence. And so it's almost like, if I assume that only people who believe that climate change is real, are watching my things. So it's like, well, my videos. So it's like, why even point these things out? I'm just kind of breaking it down for a broader audience. And so they have major scientific organizations are involved, and like intergovernmental panel, on climate change, National Aeronautics and Space, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and like, boy, wouldn't Doge like to get its hands on all of those, uh, administrations if they could, it's just like, um, okay, I'm running, I'm going ahead of myself here. So there are still active areas of scientific research. So there, and that's another thing. It's not like, well, we've done the research that, and that's it. It's like they're always monitoring, and they're able to see things like how different regions warm up and how climate change will affect specific ecosystems and communities and stuff like that. I mean, aren't you glad that there's these administrations that are trying to figure out this stuff? I mean, I don't know. Like that's where science is doing its job, I think. Um, so it's an issue. So and the thing is, the questions that the scientists are now doing regarding like climate change, it's not like is it real? It's more about the details and the impacts. How much of this is going to happen, like in the immediate future if we don't do that or this or whatever, or how much this is going to happen, 5 years down the line. And so it's not about whether or not it's happening, or anything like that. It's there, you know. So from that, I was like, okay, because I kind of had this scripted, and so now I wanted to ask ChatGPT, well, what are the most dumbest statements that Donald Trump made? Like in, you know, okay, so like these are just some off the cuff that I got. So like in April, and I used the dates to attach what happened, the occurrence with the time that it happened. And so again, because this is like, I hope I get some MAGA, viewers. I want my stuff to be seen by as many people as possible, and I'll still do them anyways because I have like 9 people right now watching my videos, and so I'm doing for you 9. You know, I guess that's. I remember I used to teach art, and the school would be like, "Well, we don't have as many students for the semester," and I'd say, "Well, let me have the class anyways, because I mean, theoretically, if there's just one student wants to learn, I'll mess around with that person and work with them, And I'm not much of a businessman. I know that you have to have a certain amount of what's it called, matriculation or retention. A population, a student population. And I totally get that. But again, like I said, I've attacked capitalism. I am a romantic. I am an idealist, and I'm somewhat disgruntled and stuff like that. I love George Carlin. I listen to Bill Hicks still, and they're both gone. I still treat them like they're right beside me. Anyways, looking at some of the dumbest things that 47 has said. COVID-19 and disinfectant. This is April 23, 2020. So during a White House coronavirus briefing, Trump said, and then I see the disinfectant where it knocks it out in 1 minute. Is there a way we can do something like that by injecting inside or almost cleansing? Now he was talking about um, just like disinfectant that you buy over the counter, right? And I would submit that that's even like including something like like Mr. Clean or some shit like Windex or some shit. That's the kind of stuff, the stuff that you see in the kitchen. He's like, put that on the person. That's pretty much what he's saying, folks. And and that's from ABC News. Okay. And then like so the medical community attacked him for that. And he comes back and says, "Oh, I was just kidding." You know? And so that's that. So number 2, climate change is a Chinese hoax. So 2012, the concept of global warming was created by and for the Chinese in order to make US manufacturing non-competitive. I mean, this guy is such a asshat. Like, so basically, Does he not know that a lot of our production is being done overseas, like in places like China, and that it is China that has the largest production line, and we are the biggest customers of said Chinese production lines? So where are the factories coming from? I mean, China's just as polluted as we are. They're probably, again, I don't want to look that up right now, but I'm just going to say China's probably more pollution ridden than we are by now because they're making more of the shit that we consume, right? Well, and that's how I do these videos. That's why I say like the devil's in the details, and just step back and look at what the game plan is, like the game theory or a game plan. What's the game? What's the advantage? You know, and that's how these things seem to work, and it really seems to pan out. And it's like so. And you could vet out the stupidity just by letting the stupidity, have its, First Amendment right. That's why I say don't shut up these people. You know, uh, but I say like you could also speak out. Like so if you have like religious people kind of annoying you because they want to talk to you about their Lord and Savior, the Latter Day Saints want to do it, or you have like people out on your campus and they're proselytizing and they're Charlie Kirk was doing it and so instead of debating them, you could have your own instead of going there and you don't want to engage them, just have your own booth and talk about evolution. I'm serious. Now you could get even one step further and say, well, we're gonna talk about magic, and Satanism or Wiccan, magic and all that. And well, yeah, I would say that if you are going to do that, make sure that you are as dedicated to it as these Christians are to what they are dedicated to. All right. Remember, the best armies are religious armies, and the best armies are Orthodox religious armies. I didn't even look that up. I just know that from my experience in life. And so two of the best armies are fighting each other right now. They're two religious armies. And so look that up. And do I have to mention anything about United States versus Iran, Israel's in the middle of it. Well, that's actually Israeli war, Israel's war. But like, so you know what I'm talking about? You know what I mean? Um, and they're using all the science that was made by people that sort of learned to let go of tradition and explore, you know, to seek out new civilizations and to boldly go where no man has gone before. Ironically, that stuff is being tethered to these Orthodox religions because like the United States is like it's like they have like they're military chaplains and stuff like that, and the Muslims have their imams, and it's all tied in and to the military and all that, like and we can pretend that it's not real, but it is, you know. And another point is the reason why we have these religions is it stokes our instincts for conquering and for overcoming. And what should have probably been the metaphor. I want to do a video where I researched that originally religion might have been, during a more of an egalitarian relationship with the planet. Religion might have been a thing more like for, if religion is even the better word, it's like a battle against yourself. Like, so you have a better nature versus a bad nature. So you have both a good nature, and I'm using these basic terms, because it's just easier to get through. Like Einstein said, if you can explain complicated ideas in a way that a younger person can understand it, good for you. And that's what I'm trying to do. Some of the words I know, Like, and so I know what Samsara is. I know what Maya is, and I know what I know who the Yeshua Hamashiach is, and I know about Nirvana, and I know about Harpazo. I know about all these words, and I know about what dispensationalism is, and I know what eschatology is and Christology. But like, if I just throw those words around, it's kind of like and I'm going to lose some of you. And I might even lose myself because I get rusty when it comes to some of these words. And I'm okay, what the fuck was that about? And so, um, you know, and if I get in here talking about quantum entanglement, that's just good for some kind of a, brain fuck, what's that going to do for what we're experiencing right now, And so that's why I focus on these kinds of things. So, so he's like saying the concept of global warming is like a Chinese hoax. When it's like you're an idiot. They're the ones making a lot of, the factory. They had a lot of the factory jobs for the stuff that we use, thanks to Nixon, who's another Republican. I mean, come on, Uh, and so like it explains why I was criticized, but come on, it doesn't mention. What's funny is it says climate science is based on decades of research, right? But it doesn't mention why would it be a Chinese hoax, if they're the one. I mean, what do you mean manufacturing competitive? They've got it all. It was because of Republicans like Nixon and that gave it to them, opened up the floodgate for that. It's just such a stupid argument, And again, Trump. And I remember that one time when Donald Trump was on a David Letterman segment, and like David Letterman, like somehow got a hold of his ties, and he showed the audience it was made in like a foreign country. It might have been China or it might have been Taiwan. It was somewhere. It was definitely not here. Okay, and like that alone, I can put on the fucking mask over here. That alone, man, it's like you're fucked. How could that guy be the president one time around if he's like right in the same segment? He's like this thing, like who I am and America first and all this, and then like, oh, but your stuff's made from in foreign countries. How he should have been history. Three, it'll start getting cooler during the California wildfires. So like 2020, remember that? Um, the California wildfires. It'll start getting colder. You just watch. Yeah, in general. Yeah, it will in December, you fucking twat. What an asshole. This guy, and like people still support this shit. And we'll see. I have this thing regular, basically scripted. Okay. In other words, I decided to have the questions that I'm asking. They're all meant to be in this sequence, in this order that I've done it. So we're still on the climate thing. We're still on his ridiculous comments now. We first talked about climate change, and now we're looking into some of the stupidest things Trump has been saying since he was president. Okay, say why? Okay, so, and so why it's criticized? Well, obviously, scientists, explain the whole weather changes day to day, not just like an overall, type of postulation. Well, it is because we say so. No, they go look. Here's our readout of all our data. Day to day kind of experience. The thing about science is that it's good. It's based on experience, one, and then it's based on the idea of being able to decipher the experience. And it's peer reviewed, all over the world, hopefully, and it's like that. It's like in these things cooperate, and it's like, yeah, this is pretty much real. And I know more about ISIS than the generals do. 2016, that was during his campaign. Yeah, and too much of you fell for his bullshit. So, He was saying he knew more than what the generals do. So again, so he knows more about, you know, war basically than the generals. That should have been another red flag, especially if you're in the military. If you are in the military, and this guy who's going to be the commander in chief, who will be your superior officer, is questioning generals. Why would you want to serve under that? Because you're not serving the American flag, or you're not serving America. You're serving a despot. You know. So we have military leaders. You know, they spend decades studying warfare and intelligence, and this guy is like trying to trump that. Yeah, Donald Trump. And it works. You know what I mean? It works. He's getting away with everything. He just gets away with everything. I talked about that in a previous video. Okay, Hurricane Dorian and the Sharpie map. Remember that? I told him I'm doing it this way because I forgot this. He was the stupid map with the marker. That's what the Sharpie is, it's a marker. Oh. And so like Trump displayed a hurricane forecast map that appeared to have been altered with a marker. Yeah, his fat, nubules, making this bullshit to show Alabama was in the storm's path. So, the National Weather Service said Alabama was unlikely to be affected, etc. And so, and he wouldn't admit his mistake, and that should be another red flag. And the thing is, because he was schooled by a con man lawyer, and one of the things that he was schooled about by this con man lawyer was never admit that you were wrong. Just keep plowing forward. And you know what? It works. I bet a lot of people in high places of power do that because it shows resolve and it shows confidence. And a lot of people, they still worship people who are overconfident, And the some of these intelligent people, they're like, well, I might be wrong about a couple of my points. Yeah, well, okay, next. And so, well, I know how to do this, that, and the other thing, and I know more about the generals. I know more about this. Okay, yeah, you're our king. Wind turbines cause cancer. I mean, okay, that's it. And so the wind turbine again, that's like, well, he doesn't care about alternate, energy. And so, okay, the things that make that, being these world turbines, wind. Did I say? Hopefully, okay, wind turbines, not world turbines. Did I say world turbine? Okay, wind turbines cause cancer. Revolutionary War in airports. Oh, remember that? The Continental Army took over the airports. And obviously, planes weren't there back then. I mean, that was between 1775 and like 1780 something, like 1783 or something. The war, the kidney has a very special place in the heart. During a 2019 speech about healthcare, Trump said, the kidney has a very special place in the heart. And I just fuck it, Okay. Nobody knew healthcare could be so complicated. Okay. Cove Fifi. Okay. Despite the constant negative press, Cove Fifi. That's the quote in context. So, like I asked, well, give me like the most silly to the most dangerous. And so Kofifi 2017 was the most silly. Despite the constant negative press, Kofifi 2015, I have the best words. 2019, the Revolutionary Army took over the airports. Okay, 2019, the kidney has a very special place in the heart. 2019. Windmills cause cancer, 2016. I know more about ISIS than the generals do. Now let's get like the more serious things. 2017. Nobody knew healthcare could be so complicated, and so this is something that's been going on for decades. And here he comes up and says, yeah, well, you know what? Guess what, Adrian? I didn't know it's so complicated. Adrian, you know, put it to rest already. And like this is like influenced attempts to replace affordable health care without a clear replacement plan, which has happened. Some of you fucking Trump pumping asshole shitbags are going to lose your health insurance after the midterms. Well, fuck you. All right. I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody. That's 2016. The China virus will disappear. It's like Trump supporters. Well, yeah, he was right. It came from China, so yeah, Adrian. But he said it was just going to disappear. Now that's what a lot of so that statement that the virus will disappear, that is so laced with poison. That's even worse than the virus when you think about it, because that dictates a more like a Malthusian concept. And so some of us don't even know what the heck that is. So like that stems from this philosopher, economist slash philosopher, Malthus, and like 200 or whatever years ago, he said things like, so you have a population, and they tend to outgrow the food supply of any given society or civilization. And so it's like, so what he believed that you have to let that happen, and so then nature will take its course again, and it'll bring back things, it'll even things out again. So you let you let this type of thing crash, where there's going to be people who do die, but the rest of us will move on, and civilizations will press on, and that's something that you just can't stave off. And what's interesting about that is and now looking back, that's kind of inhumane, But if you study like history, that's what like England did to Ireland, and that's why you got the potato famine. Like look into it, right? And a bunch of other cases like that across the board. And also with what brought the Great Depression on was this idea that the market will uh, you know manage itself, and so you have like the boom and the bust kind of thing about the economy. And the reason why rich octogenarians like that with those funny tall black hats is because they knew that they could manipulate the market when they can anticipate a crash, and they could sell stocks, and then you can buy them again later, and blah blah blah. And so that's why you want that. But you want to have one, you want to have disasters, and two, those disasters affect Wall Street. And so you don't want to have Wall Street be like this humdrum, like, oh, it's always the same, always the same. There are no peaks, there's no wars, no disasters, and where everything is like like a fine, nice, leveled off homeostasis. And then there's no way you can get a quick fix to bump up your your freaking like your profits. It all ties in, and so like this. And that's the heart of, I would say, not just capitalism, but market, economics, the monetary, market, whatever economics, the marketplace. Like that's what's at the heart of it, and so on and so on. So, anyways, so that's the whole. That's like really loaded with like to me that statement, and for people to believe that, that's like when you're like, here, this is a blanket, and this will um you know give you warmth or what have you, but really it's laced with smallpox or chickenpox or something. That's kind of like what that is, and people buy it. Um, and So testing creates cases. I never heard that one. I almost want to skip it. Like 2020, Trump suggested that if the U.S. tested less, there would be fewer cases. So that means that's totally against science. That's totally against any kind of empirical basis of reality. How do you know anything if you don't do anything? So how do you know what will test to be positive or negative if you don't do any tests? Uh, hydrochloroquine could be a game changer. Hydrochloroquine can be a game changer. So he promotes that the drug was a possible COVID treatment before strong evidence is supported. And at the same time, here's the thing: it's like him and Joe Slow fucking Rogan, they're like pushing these kinds of like like horse pills and shit and other bullshit like like that, and at the same time saying that yeah, because of vaccines that who or everybody like on the medical left is like trying to push the vaccine. They had to slap it together and administer it. Well, there's not enough time to determine if that vaccine is effective. Oh, but there is enough time to say that this shit that's never been tested is good for COVID, these over the counter things. It's such a double standard that it's enough to make your head spin. So climate change will just reverse itself. Climate change will just reverse yourself. That goes back to that whole, Thomas Mathis again. It's the same kind of mentality. It will heal itself. It will check itself. All those people starving and shit. Yeah, well, it's just, think about what's going to happen after all that. And it's the same with all these things. That's what I'm saying. It's all attached to me. It's all connected. In terms of a narrative, it's all connected. Or an ideology, if that's a better word. Okay, climate change is a Chinese hoax. I think I already said that. Um, Clean coal claims. He said coal is clean. So how many of you have parents that worked in the coal mines? How many of you had grandparents that worked in the coal mines? Okay, enough. And the pollution that you get from that, okay, enough. The wall will be paid for by Mexico. Now here's a very serious. And you said Hurricane Dorian was going towards Alabama. Let's review that. It's like he insisted Alabama was threatened after the National Weather Service said otherwise, and displayed an altar map. He was destroying our trust in weather communications. Again, more science, meteorology during an emergency. Okay, inject disinfectant to kill COVID. That's okay. So yeah, they injecting these disinfectants are dangerous. We don't need to go over that. COVID will disappear by Easter. Again, that's like that Malthusian mindset, applied to like say a pandemic as opposed to people starving. I'm taking the theory by Malthus about starvation and how that differs from the amount of food supply there is. You could take that mindset is for everything else that's pro hyper capitalism. It's the same mindset. Like you got to have these casualties for this thing to fly. That's basically what it is. And even Charlie Kirk said that about. It's like it's all connected, people. Like, remember when Charlie Kirk said that, like, I don't remember the exact quote. I don't want to look it up, but he said something about to the effect of like how the Second Amendment, that's to bear arms. I could have a gun. Anyways, all right, partner. I could have guns. I'll probably take this off too. It's gonna get warm. And somehow he said that like you'll have to have an X number of deaths to ensure the strength, or I can't find the right word right off the top of my head, but like to keep the Second Amendment, intact or alive, like to keep it robust, so that you have to have these human sacrifice casualties of people being killed by some kind of criminal activity. And so it's like, yeah, so we have to have that so that people are going to have more guns to stave that off. It's the same kind of mindset. You have to have these casualties for the rest of us to benefit. I don't know. Am I wrong for putting all these things together? I tend to do that a lot. I piss off a lot of people when I do that, but then they come back after a week and it's like, yeah, I kind of, they want to hang out with me somewhere. Yeah, okay, yeah, because I'm not going to think like, the average pundit. I got it from my grandfather on my mom's side, and I also got it from my dad on my dad's side. Okay. Okay. The election was stolen. Okay, that totally undermines everything that America, politically, whatever, stands on. Like so it's like you are voted out and you refuse to leave. And still it's like the whole January 6th refusal to pass the baton, to Biden. It's like, and everyone saw how that thing escalated and how people died, including policemen. And these people are like left to go scot free. Like he pardons them all, and then they wind up circling back, and they now they're a member of ISIS. Or no, now they're a member of ICE. And so now they're ICE, and so so it's like the impact is, it says, one of the most consequential claims of his presidency, contributing to distrust in elections and the events surrounding January. So the thing is, I think that everyone believes in a conspiracy or two, because I believe that we all adhere to narratives that are not always proven to be true. And I'm a victim of this. One of my conspiracies is that there is an invisible, I don't know about invisible, but like actively invisible. They're probably visible, like Peter Thiel is visible, and people like that. They want this kind of stuff, this kind of instability to happen in our government, because our government, when it's doing its job, is like a referee checking, like don't hit below the belt and stuff like that in this, game of life. You know what I mean? Like you can't cheat in the game of life. And so that's what a good government is supposed to do. No, you can't do that, And I wish they, it's like you go to a theater and it's like, I know that was the first time I had a problem with like how adults were doing things. And I was a snot nosed pick, no, I wasn't like picking my nose. I was a kid, and I that was the first time I noticed something was weird. It's like, wait a minute, and I don't even eat at theaters. I don't. When you're a kid, you're hungry, But like, it's like, okay, this hot dog costs X number of quarters or whatever. But like, if I go over here, just across the street, and get the same hot dog, it's like half the price. And so that created a mind fuck in my impressionable little mind. And if every kid put their like appetite aside and say, wait a minute, and then I want to like do something and go to school and learn how to deal with this. Wouldn't we have like a better world? You know what I mean? So now I'm just focusing on hot dogs at the theater. You know, it's like, if you're in New York, you get those, hot dogs, out in the street, like, the food vendors. That's a good hot dog, man. I'm not from New York, but I've tasted a hot dog there. I went there, I visited. Man, I'm beginning to sound like Donald Trump. Yeah, I went there. It was actually pretty good. Sorry. I do sidetrack a lot, So, anyways, so very fine people on both sides. After the Charlottesville rally, look up the Charlottesville rally. Um, he said that there was very fine people on both sides. So it was like defining controversies of his presidency over how he addresses extremists and political violence. So you have like people on the ultra right killing and doing violence, and it's like, well, there's some fine people there on both sides. He was always after like the Antifa, anybody that's protesting, like what happened to like George Floyd and other things like, let's take down these Confederate statues. He looks upon that as like, these guys are terrorists. Meanwhile, you have at the far right, including the Proud Boys and the crap that they pull, and also the crap that they pulled in the January 9th, attempt to overthrow the fucking government, which is what I saw this as. Here's the thing, you're watching TV and imagine like the narrative is, this is what's happening like in a socialist country. You know, you know what I mean? It's like, how would you sum that up? And you would say that, oh, it's great. It's great because I'm a capitalist. No socialists are bad. So these people are overthrowing their government. And like, so two things about that. So like, there's a thing called yellow journalism, and there's a thing called the United Fruit Company. And then you have a third thing called banana republics. And so it's like, you got to get people all stoked up to overthrow governments that don't want to do business with the American United Fruit Company in like Central America and South America. And so you got to overthrow those governments. I mean, and Reagan was doing that, when he was president, El Salvador and that. It's like, and the whole thing with the Contras, the Iran Contra scandal. I mean, it was all, and Reagan's like, a reporter tries to ask him about it, and he's standing next to the helicopter, his helicopter. He's like, and he points to the helicopter blades, like, but you could still hear the reporter, but for some reason you can't hear him. It's just so. Okay. There I go again. Okay. The press is the enemy of the people. That ties in with what I just got done saying about yellow journalism. So, okay, now we got our own yellow journalism. That's what Trump is he's trying to say that the journalism that we have here is false to overthrow me, which was what we were doing in like Latin America. We would come up with this bullshit journalism to brainwash people to overthrow their own governments so that new government would come in place that would do, business aligning with American profiteering interests, And so you can see how it's all like, you look up Rubio, his past, his connections with drugs. This is just fucked up, America, So he's like saying, okay, it's like, Jesus, God, you cannot have freedom without the free press. He wants to shackle the free press. That's what free means. You can get it. And it's free of, the biased conditions that are, rained on you from I was going to say the losers. Well, Trump is the loser, but the leaders. And I submit that all news should be free, completely free. It's a free press. It's free. If something should be given us to us for free, it should be the news for free. And you can kiss both of my cheeks if you think I'm wrong. That's free press, man. It's free from any influence by anybody, especially the government. And the corporate bought free press is a problem. It should be free of all of that, and it should be free to the people. Somehow that has to be made. That always should be there. And if you look at like doublethink, 1984 and all that, you see how all that's like rolled back. And you have people believing just pure bullshit, wartime peace, peace and war, wartime peace, and all that weird shit. It's just such a it's double talk, man. I like how ever hear the term forked tongue? You speak with a forked tongue, and that's the myth, the urban myth, which I think is more like a fact. Again, I'm not gonna look this up, but like the idea is that you have like these like Washington and people like that, talking to like Chief Seattle and other natives here, and they're trying to do business with them, get their land. It's like when you say one thing, you do another. That's forked tongue. And what's cool is like snakes have forked tongue. That's really just, man, that's so piercing. And that's one of the first things I learned about like native culture here. And that's just sort of like I feel like I have European blood in me, although I was born here in the States, via European parents. Italians being exacted. The Indian, like the way Indians are and all that, that's not in Europe, like in Italy and all that. That's a whole Western. That's the true American. It's like the Redskins. So racist sounding. I do apologize. But, like the people who are from here that were here before we arrived from Europe, they're the real Americans. And so, like, wow, that's such an interesting way of putting it. That's what drew me closer to that kind of mentality. So, like, anyways, if you're listening, so during campaign, Trump publicly called for Russia to find Hillary Clinton's emails. So why wouldn't you have like Russiagate, And the whole thing with what he's doing with Ukraine, he's like yanking Ukraine's chain while appeasing Putin. It's the weirdest thing that we're fucking seeing. That's a video about like the different parties that are fighting right now. And I pretty much said the only one who's standing as victorious from all of this is Israel. And you look at like the little section I talk about with how Trump is interacting with the president of Ukraine. I mean, he was humiliating him from day one. He was humiliating him when he was president second time around, and all these fucking thugs in the Oval Office are making fun of how he was dressed. And this guy's like he's like fucking George Washington right now. This guy. I don't even, okay. So the funny thing is, he was like a comedian, and I remember seeing a video of him with a fellow comedian, and like it's from like here up, like so here up, you can see him, but you can't see what's going on below camera. But he's in front of a piano, and supposedly he's playing the keys with his member, and he was a comedian. He's a comedian, and that's kind of grody actually. It's like it's kind of gross, I want to play those keys. You better wipe those keys down with, Donald Trump's Kwafifi, before you play those keys. Fucking moron. But like, so he, he's like, in a way, he's like George Washington. He is like fighting a battle for survival, like George Washington. He's like a general, and it's like he shows up, to hopefully wasn't an ally, say, yeah, give us reinforcements against this common enemy, but. Donald Trump, I mean, it's just so fucking weird. And they're like, well, you're not even dressed for the occasion. Why don't you have a tie? Now, isn't that the most corporate fucking ass-licking kind of behavior that you expect to abide by? That's being driven to you? And he's saying it to Zelensky. He's saying that to you. And it's like fuck you, man. It's like, and so that's how it's always been between, and then I had this fucking guy, like, I don't want to mention his name, but I grew up with this kid. And so now he's like, well, you shouldn't, he was like, well, the Biden is weak. Biden is weak. Biden is weak. So that means Trump is strong. Yeah, but who was giving Ukraine a lot of backup? It was Biden. Like 60, like, I'm going to say 60 bill a year. And now it's just a fraction of that because Biden's no longer there. And so now it's like a lukewarm stance against Russia because our munitions, being given, like they're gonna probably have to trade it back somehow. Like, okay, like it's like a loan or whatever, right? Isn't that what it doesn't matter. So right now we give it to them. It doesn't matter for the current situation, but it's not a lot anymore, because like this fat ass fuckface commander in chief is his main priority is Iran to fight Israel's war. So he like I said, he's leaking at the seams, internationally. He's just a fucking asshat, diarrhea of the mouth, and people like you'll see here who still supports him. Now we're into like an hour, so c'est la vie, heavy leaves all turn to brown, these scatter them around you, c'est la vie. Oh, c'est la vie, who knows, who cares for me, c'est la vie. So Russia, if you're listening, join me in attacking the common enemy, which are the Democrats, because Putin doesn't like the Democrats. All right. So who was strong or who was weak? It's like, it's just, how could you say that about Biden when he was giving a lot more munitions to stave off this oppressor, Hey, highest potential harm. It goes 3, 2, 1. We're done with his stupid comments. Downplaying COVID-19 while privately acknowledging danger. Danger, danger, Will Robinson. Trump publicly minimized COVID while later saying he understood it was dangerous. Again, that's like, what? Is that double talk? What the fuck is this? Or double, like double standards, sport tongue. He's such a fucker. And if you voted for him, you're a fucker. So it becomes a major controversy because public health messaging during public pandemic depends heavily on trust. And so that's it. He threw like this wrench in some kind of concerted, cooperated effort by WHO and all these other organizations. This was a fucking pandemic, And, I know people from the church I used to go to, they fucking died because they all got COVID and they fucking died, and like, so one of the arguments that, like him and his stupid base would say against like getting vaccines is like, well, like you go, you have like a heart condition and then when you die and they say it's COVID, or you have like, some other respiratory problem and they call that COVID. And so it's all just a bunch of bullshit, hey, you heard that, right? And it's like, you don't know what comorbidity means, And so that's like when people are dying, it's not just like one thing, multiple things are going on. And then that's just so COVID just pushes it over the cliff. And that's what people have to understand. Because like I said, people that I was going to the same church, they fucking died from this shit. Yeah, comorbidity, reasons, but it was because of COVID that they wind up pushing fucking daisies now. And they're not going to be harpazoed by their Lord and Savior anytime soon. They're going to become reconstituted back to the earth. Nothing leaves. Look. Okay, here, I'll explain so even you understand it. Okay, you take like this much dirt and you have like this much biological living matter on that dirt, and you weigh it. Okay, you write down your numbers. Okay, now you're gonna pump some, you're gonna let some air be in there. You're gonna set the thing on fire, and you put it under glass. Everything that was living, organic, whatever, is burned to a crisp. It cools off. You weigh it. Guess what, people? It's the same fucking weight. So all you fucking people in France who are Christians, all you fucking people in Michigan who are Christians, you all die. You're not going anywhere. You're just gonna stay. You're staying right fucking here. All right. You're staying right fucking here. And you know what? That stuff you're eating, that food you're eating, that's from a distant. That's from the body of a distant fucking relative. We're all fucking cannibals, indirectly speaking. You ever fucking think about that? I had one fucking pastor say evolution can't be true because we're all the bones, like the human bones. It'd be like the high heaven. Yeah, like the number of buffalo skulls that we killed all the buffalo to starve out the native population. Are you talking about skulls like that? Well, look, Bucko, that didn't happen all in one generation. It took millions of fucking years, and that stuff breaks down and it becomes the earth again, and it becomes fertilizer for plants eaten by other animals that are eaten by you. That's why I'm saying we're indirectly fucking cannibals. And you're fucking standing on dead bodies, so decomposed and recommitted to the elements of the earth. It's just fucking soil. How do you think we have what's called rich soil, Elon Musk? You fucking asshole. Oh, I'm going to go to Mars and we're going to terraform Mars. You got to fucking have, millions of years of life to die to create the fucking conditions for an ecosystem like what we have here in order to fucking have any kind of reasonable, decent life there. And I'll tell this to any fucking person who's supporting this bullshit. You look outside, that sky, you know what the fucking most important things are? The most important fucking things are clean air, fresh water, rich soil, and sunlight. The rest is TT. All right? You understand what the fuck I'm talking about? And we still don't fucking get it. We still do not have a fucking clue. We have this guy in the fucking White House. That's the proof of what I'm saying. So false claims about the election fraud 2020. And so so here you got distrust in public health assessment. And number two, distrust in our government. Now, who benefits from that, people? Billionaires, certain ones that invest in industries that bank on distrust in medicine of a certain ilk, and this other thing with the government, distrusting especially the government, distrusting the government, and somehow it always points back to when you distrust anything that's like a referee, and you upset the referee, somehow that's going to make some of these people over here more wealthy. And that's a problem. Now, I know that with, I might have put my foot in my mouth regarding the public health thing because Pfizer made a lot of money with the vaccines. And yeah, I know Democrats, they have stock shares in those companies like Pfizer that were making a vaccine. And I totally get that. Elizabeth Warren was one of them. I totally get all that. All right. But what I'm saying in general, deregulation means exploitation. Deregulation ultimately will point or lead to exploitation. That's all I'm saying. Okay. Devil in the details. So, I try to check myself so you get the idea, especially with the government. Like Reagan, I mentioned this again, Reagan saying the government is not the solution to the problem, the government is the problem. That's just that's what led us into the shit garden that we are in now, pushing up shit flowers. And the commander in chief's a fucking shithead. He's a shit monster commander in chief. This goes back to Reagan and the deregulation of everything. The privatizing all. That's what I meant by how they're going to make money. So here, okay, yeah, I might be able to vindicate myself. So you don't have the government saying what's right and what's wrong involving public health. So you privatize that. Oh, we'll tell you, science is. You privatize science. You can't. We should not privatize science, and you shouldn't privatize the press. All right. Let that sink in. So false claims about the election fraud. Well, that we already know about that. That's like and election was stolen. We already know about that. That's number one. So that's why we are where we are at. It's like um that we're a first world country behaving like a third world government. Let me repeat that again. We are a first world country behaving like a third world government. So I'm getting close to ending this. I again, these three questions were like arranged specifically for this video. Has Donald Trump affected the doomsday clock? Yes, he has. He's like one of the political figures whose actions and policies have been considered by the scientists who set the doomsday clock. So they set the doomsday clock like you have like you have 12 o'clock, 1, 2, 3, 4, to midnight, right? And so when it hits midnight, that's like the atom bombs are exploding, and bada boom, bada boom. That's you can't stop that running train. So that's what the doomsday clock is. And so, well, he didn't personally move it, so it's all good. Okay, anyway. So his actions have affected it. So yeah, like it's called the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, the Atomic Scientists, um, Science and Security Board, another organization like Doge would probably want to get the fuck if they could. The octopus tentacles would, anything regular, anything the government that says that we're going to use this to referee things. They want to get rid of the fucking referee, people. They want to fucking get rid of the fucking referee, and so now we have like these global, tragedy happening here because so during Trump's first presidency, the bulletin specifically cited concerns connected to his words and policies, blah blah blah. January 2017, shortly after that he took office, the clock moved from 3 minutes to midnight to 2.5 minutes to midnight. Okay, so it deals with the problems dealing with nuclear risks, climate change, and Trump's statements and actions during the campaign and transition period. So obviously the nuclear weapons risk. So Trump's rhetoric towards nuclear-armed countries, his comments about nuclear weapons and military strength, strains on international agreements and armed control systems. With Iran, right? The bulletin has repeatedly emphasized that weakening communication and arms control structures between nuclear powers increases the danger. And then you have like the withdrawal of the United States from the Paris Climate Agreement. Support for fossil fuel expansion, skepticism towards the mainstream climate science. And so you have that. So so viewed by critics and as increasing climate risk, climate change has been one of the factors considered in doomsday clock decisions since 2017. So the two biggest problems the problem is everyone's like, they're living in like what's called the century of self, where you have bulletin boards and social media and commercials saying you're the most important thing and you do you. It's all about you. It's all about you. It's all about you. And what's really funny is, well, I don't want to get into the joke about cats, so I'm not going to do it. Okay. And so when you are being led down that primrose path of like self-fulfillment, it's all about you, it's all about you, you're really fulfilling their dreams. The upper class, the people who exploit you, the lower class. You're a part of the fucking lower class. I don't care what you think you are. You are, I guarantee you are in debt. You're in debt. Well, he's 20K, 20,000, some of you, 10,000, 20,000, probably more. You have house mortgages. You're not a fucking capitalist. You're in debt. You're poor. If you're in debt, guess what? You're poor. If you're in debt, guess what? You're poor. If you have a house mortgage, guess what? You're fucking poor. So yeah, like number three, trust in institutions and misinformation. The bulletin has considered broader issues like erosion of trust in democratic institutions, misinformation, weakening international cooperation. So biological threats. Guess what? We're gonna have another pandemic. I might want to make a video about that. Like, what are the chances of it? And like what should we target as to like the cause of it? I guarantee you, the video will be about like how did Doge, help prevent a future pandemic, and or how is it might ease the barrier between us and another pandemic, and it's gonna be the latter. It doesn't directly cause the pandemic, but Doge will somehow, you ever see like that weird sport called curling, where you have like um, this this metal disc with a handle, and it's on a sheet of ice, and so you have somebody throw that, and it just slides to like what looks like like it's like you have like these other discs, and you got to hit the ones out of the place and put yours in there to get a higher score. And then like so you have these two people with these brooms to make that path that disc travels more smooth, so that it creates, because you want to reduce the amount of friction of this metal body on that ice sheet. It's physics, all right, and you increase the friction so that it just glides better. And so it's like, well, that's what Doge is doing for the next. So that thing in curling, that disc is the next pandemic we're gonna get. And you know what Doge is? Those two fucking people with the brooms, and this thing is like going like that. And that's what Doge is doing regarding like clearing the pathway for another fucking pandemic. If you don't think so, you're a fucking idiot. All right. So basically, the fourth one is biological threats. Trump's handling of the COVID-19 became part of the broader debates about pandemic preparedness. Didn't he like fire all the people that Obama had in place, like the scientists, the immunologists, or I think what they're called, the immunologists, that like their job is to like help visualize what might happen and somehow prevent it. And so this is Doge before Doge. He goes, well, I'm going to get rid of those people because they're not working for their paycheck. And then during his presidency, the first time around, we got a fucking goddamn pandemic, and no one cares. And he's president again. George Costanza. Okay. So this is what it says. A fair way to summarize it: Trump alone did not cause. Well, of course he didn't. He didn't. I hate it when AI does that. Why the fuck did you say that? I said, like, how do you contribute? Got to go there and like touch the clock and Kwafifi the handle, the Kwafifi the to midnight, the Kwafifi to midnight. Hey, under the moonlight, me and my honey, Melania, or whatever her fucking, I can't even stand his wife's. We're gonna sail under the moonlight towards the Kwafavi sunset. Disgusting. I try to make light of it, but Ivanka, Melania. He married she's a fucking, she's not American. One way she's American because she has a lot of money. She's married to this piece of shit. A fucking foreigner. And there's a statue of her in her hometown. Like, this is fucking stupid shit, man. Is that what we're here for? Is this the reason why we pushed ourselves from the primordial ooze to crawl on land? And this is it. This is the creme de la creme of humanity. Shit, man. So Trump alone. Okay, so the bulletin of scientists, these atomic scientists, viewed some of Trump era policies and rhetoric is bad. We're dealing with Russia, China, nuclear modernization, climate change, AI wars, and global instability. So I wanted to get like a timeline, and so let's look at let's end this with okay, doomsday clock timeline. Let's look at let's go up to 19. Let's go to 1991. George um, George Bush Sr. was president, and it was 17 minutes to midnight. And so what's really weird, it moved back a little bit. In other words, a little bit safer because this was the end of the Cold War. So the collapse of the Soviet Union, it makes sense, you know. It happened under like Reagan's watch, and with all this stuff. And then by the time this other guy was president, then no more Soviet Union, but the Cold War ended and all that. So that's why that happened. Okay, 2002, George, baby Bush, 7 minutes to midnight. It moves a little closer, after 9/11 and all that. I'm not going to get into the details there. 2007, George baby Bush again, 5 minutes to midnight. So it's increased. It's getting closer. And you can see why, because why people, why. So like the Russian threat has been, stymied, and so with Bush Senior, it's like the doomsday clock kind of rolled back. But with baby Bush, um, it's advancing towards midnight because of our dealings with the Middle East. So now it's 5 minutes to midnight. Obama, it went back. It went back to 6 minutes to midnight. It's kind of sad because in his second term, it went back to 5 minutes because he wasn't doing anything about like the nuclear race. Like I think nuclear race started to pick up again after 9/11. I have to look into that detail because that's worth looking into. So, anyways, not now, but later. And so that's Obama, and also like apparently he didn't like push on climate actions. Um, 3 minutes to midnight. More Obama. More a bummer. Climate change worsening. Nuclear modernization. Ukraine crisis and global. Okay, so now Ukraine's in the picture. So when Ukraine got in the picture, that's when Russia got back into the picture. So that's our biggest problem is with Russia and the Middle East regarding like an atomic holocaust happening. So and then like Barack Obama, 3 minutes to midnight, there's no change. Scientists said risks remain extremely high though, so that's Obama. 2017, Donald Trump, 2.5 minutes to midnight. It adjusted right after he took office because Donald Trump is a fuckhead. All right, and that's exactly what it says. No, but really, because the reason why is because of his inability to play ball with the rest of the world. He doesn't want to stay in the climate, um, climate room with like Europe, like say with France, like get out of there, and it's like well, he doesn't care about climate change. He thinks it's a hoax. So and then he has the North Korea tensions, calling him Rocket Man. Remember that? And so you have stuff like that. So we now the increased nuclear problem. So it's a combination of nuclear problem and the climate problem. That's when he first became. That's when the first time he became president. Now, 2018, it's 2 minutes to midnight. North Korea nuclear tensions, U.S. Russia nuclear tensions, weakening in international cooperation and climate progress. This tied the closest setting ever at the time. Okay, 2019, Donald Trump, 2 minutes to midnight. Continue concerns about the same things that I had mentioned. 100 seconds to midnight. Now, this is before 2021 when Biden became president. This is 2020. So that scientists cited nuclear risks, climate failures, uh, concerns about misinformation and weakened institutions. So that's just going to be the shoe in for what he's going to do after Biden's gone. And so now you have Biden, 100 seconds to midnight, and that's because of stuff that's over his head. COVID-19, nuclear risks, and also he's going to start putting money in weapons in the particular direction of Ukraine. Uh, it's no change. So I'm not going to read. If it's no change, I'm not going to read it. You have increased Russian tension, so that's going to be because of Ukraine. That's going to improve. That's going to make it move closer. So it moves it closer. When Russia came in, it was moved closer, and then so now and after that was no change. So a lot of the reasons why with Biden, and it was like, it never went back like it did for I think Obama, was because of Russia invading Ukraine. So Trump's second term, it's 89 seconds to midnight. And you know why. The stuff that we've been talking about, like this video and all the other videos, So that's where we're 80 seconds to, another nuclear explosion and used in the battlefield. That's what that's what I'm going to say. Instead of like destroying the world, it ain't going to happen overnight. But like you're going to have like somehow. My prediction is, because I'm not a weapons guy, but like if you can make a missile that has a very small nuclear warhead, and it's enough to take out like Moscow. We just want to take out like the main part of Moscow where their factories are. I don't even know what Moscow is like, but like you take this will destroy like what kind of a bomb can destroy like 100 or 500 blocks of a given like infrastructure. That's like a general way of looking at it. Well, whatever that is, because right now you have to have a bunch of missiles. Like Iran shoots a whole bunch of missiles in the direction of Tel Aviv, and all the military bases that surround Iran. We have all these fucking military bases that surround Iran. And Iran's just wipe them all out with their missiles. So what if you can have like a missile just take out one missile per military base, one missile per like factory or city, and so I think the first leakage of another nuclear war will be like, well, it's a missile. And again, I don't know anything about making weapons or anything, but imagine a missile that its payload is carrying this explosive that has conventional explosives with traces of nuclear explosive, like just a little bit of the nuclear. So it kind of like works with the conventional. So it makes that boom of a conventional boom like 500 times, of a bigger boom. So it's if you're gonna say, well, so it's not nuclear, and so you're gonna have like these talking heads, like like people are pro Trump, like people like JD Vance and all these fucking. When Trump is gone, you're gonna still have JD Vance there. You're gonna still have Rubio there, and God forbid Hegseth. Are they all gonna be gone? Well, all these and then you have like Trump's family. And then you're gonna have these people that work for him. And Peter Thiel and all these fucking assholes, they support this shit. And Google, Gulf of Mexico became Gulf of America. I mean, this toxic country's like politics and how Wall Street works and everything, and this corporatocracy that's taken over with the technocrats, that's like become rich, fertile soil for the shit flowers, the shit trees to grow. And Donald Trump has a family tree, so that whole thing is a shit tree. And that's all I have to say about that. So, like, and even like, okay, like George Bush, So presidents associated with the clock moving safer. George Bush was considered one of the safer presidents. Maybe that's why I call him a wimp president. And he went, no, I'm kidding. Okay, so Obama is the second safest. George W. Bush. So George Senior Bush, not George Baby, not Baby Bush, Senior Bush. So Baby Bush, more of a risk. Trump, more of a greater risk. So 89 seconds to midnight, the closest ever recorded. So did Trump affect it? Yes. Trump has definitely affected it. So that's the kind of fucker that we have in the White House. That's our commander in chief. So I'm going to end it with this: is Trump's core fan base still supporting him, even though he's gotten into the war with Iran and all that stuff with Iran is happening? And this is why I decided to make the video. I was asking AI these questions in a particular order that I wanted, and then I go, oh, I'm going to ask him this. Now had his base like no, if it said something like this, no, the large part of Trump's core MAGA base no longer supports him because of his involvement with Iran. That's not the case, people, and that's why I'm making this video. And that's why you're here, hopefully watching it. Okay, so it's like yes. So like the question again, I'm going to end it with: is Trump's core fan base still supporting him, even though he has gotten into war with Iran and all this stuff with Iran is happening? Yes, a large part of Donald Trump's core MAGA base is still supporting him, despite the Iran conflict. Now here's the hope, though, and I will include the hope. There are some signs of crack. All right, so it's not just a butt crack that their noses in 47's butt crack. We're not talking about that crack. There, certain Trump supporters are like, I'm talking not there's like these there's a few. I've seen some videos where like, I can't believe that this is happening. I voted for him. So there is that. So that might be the indicator right here. That's signs of the cracks. And the reason being because the whole American First message. He said that he blamed like the Democrats for all these international wars. He's what fucking and so like like 9/11. Who was like was that a Democrat? It's like how the fuck. So anyways, so like the whole American First message that Donald Trump pitched to become the president is being pitched into the wastebasket, into the garbage bin, into the hog trough for all the swine to reek, and the fan base is still there for him. The core MAGA base is still there for him, and yeah, it says a little bit of division, but you know what? I'm not satisfied. So it's like let's see if I have any numbers. Among the self-identified Republicans, support for his handling of Iran remains high. One Pew Research survey found that about 7 in 10 Republican-leaning voters approved of his handling of the conflict, and 79% of Republicans who identify as Republicans approved. So, and I say, why? Because they have a diversified portfolio, and so as this thing goes on with the in and out with Iran, you know, they're the companies that are affected are making profits, and they hold shares in those companies. That's why the Republicans are all for this, And then you have some of them because they don't like Muslims and they don't want that whole thing here, and you also have that. So it's because he's confronting a hostile foreign government. So, and the reason why, okay, so it's really weird. Like, so you can get like a following if you go to war, and so with Trump, he's able to accrue some type of or a follower, a number of followers to keep at him because he shows resolve. You know, the idiot king who is always sure of himself will be able to remain in power for another day. You know, and that's been going on since times of Rome and all that, where you have a lot of fucking fiasco emperors there. But the one thing that they all had in common was that they were sure of themselves to the point where they thought they were like, divine. So there's that. And so Trump has also crossed that line where he's also like seen by his fan base as something divine. And so the question that you fuckers got to be asking yourself is, why are we spending money overseas? Why are we fighting for Israel? I voted for an American president for America's interest, not Israeli. Netanyahu, the fishnet and the drink. You know, and so that's what you MAGA people have to do now, is to really check yourself at the door and realize, shit, he doesn't care about me. And kudos to the younger generation of Republicans, because the younger generation Republicans and Republican-leaning independents, they are in a different opinion than your older Republicans, meaning that the younger crowd is very hesitant about what Trump is doing now in overseas, what he's doing over there overseas. So the problem is this loyalty to their Führer. It's because of loyalty to Trump himself. So Trump has historically maintained unusually strong loyalty among his base. Many supporters evaluate controversial actions through the question, do I trust Trump to be making the right call, rather than judging each policy independently, which is something that I've learned since I was a teenager. And I was looked at funny, like, you'd vote Republican. Well, yeah, if he's saying and doing the right things, I don't care what color, his shirt is, red or blue. But people who are more savvy in politics, they would say, yeah, but there's a whole bunch of a Trojan horse type of thing if you voted for the Republican guy. If he sounds good on the platform, like Trump did. Trump is like, hey, I'm going to bring all the jobs back to America. I'm going to shut the border, and I'm going to, end all the wars. America first, baby. None of that is happening. And I also made a fucking other video that demonstrates that if we got rid of all the illegals, all the undocumented here, our economy would grind to a fucking halt. Now, a similar thing would happen in Canada. I looked it up. But with Canada, there's a far less number of undocumented there, so that it would very much handicap their economy and fuck it up in many ways, and a lot of people would suffer. But it wouldn't. Canada would be able to recover. So we're not Canada, people. And guess what? Canada's more socialist. So let that sink in. Because with a very greedy type of capitalist mindset running the markets in the United States, you gotta have all those undocumented, baby. You gotta have all that, because if you want, you gotta watch my video, man, because we name the exact casualty points that would occur if all the illegals were disappeared by Merlin's magic wand, or whatever. I'm winding this down. So it's like hardcore MAGA supporters are still with Trump. Okay? And I'm telling you right now, that when I'm saying F you and all that, I'm referring to these, I'm pointing to these people, you thought I would be done. But alas, we are not. But we are going to be done after this question. I decided to bring Okay, I knew the answer to this question, but I want to go over it with you. So I'm like, what did Socrates say about democracies? So in the his student Plato is one who published his works. So in the Republic and some other book, you know. Well, okay. Anyways, uh, he it's not that he was against freedom. Democracy, you know, it's equated with freedom to a certain extent, but like the Greeks would use analogies to get the point across. They always liked analogies, and so imagine a ship where the sailors fight over who should steer. They choose the person who is best at flattening them. No, I can't read, man. Okay, so you get the ones that are able to, like, you know, flatter them and soothsay them. You know, you flatter them. So the sailor, they choose the person who can flatter them, and not the person who actually understands how to navigate a ship. And isn't and then you think of the metaphor, a ship of fools, and all that. Isn't that just a beautiful statement? So it goes like this. So a ship needs a skilled captain. Medicine needs a trained doctor. Therefore, governing should require knowledge and virtue, not merely winning votes. And so, and then the story is like he liked to tease people, and he basked in his superior intellect. He probably had a really high IQ, like brilliant. If they didn't have intelligent quotient tests then, but and so he would able to prove to you that the Earth was flat, you know, because you couldn't prove that the Earth was round, you know, and that up is down, and he would be able to fuck with you, and he had fun with it, you know. But like he would do that with democracy, and so he was for, you know, this is okay. There's a lot of stuff about the real story about what really happened to Socrates, but it still is connected to the idea that he had to drink this poisonous drink, um, because he was polluting the minds of the youth. And you know, there's a lot more to it than that, but we'll just leave it there. So he was killed for like calling out stupid people running the government. So he criticized politicians who lacked wisdom, citizens who followed persuasive speakers without thinking, decisions made without expertise. Now, you know what that is? Wait, I don't know. He didn't say it in so many words, but so the way advertising works, and I want to make a video about this. I had this revelation not that long ago about like the way, okay, I studied graphic design and I taught it, and I worked with people who are professional. I'm like a professional fine artist, but or a professor and a fine artist, but like these guys were professional in commercial businesses, and they knew that like with and I understand about the psychology behind how advertising works, because I know who Edward Bernays is, the nephew of, you know, of Sigmund Freud, and I know how his expertise was used to create the mindset of the American consumer, which is you. It's all connected to that, folks. And and so the idea is to bypass logic by appealing to the emotion so that you make an irrational decision. And guess what else that does that? Religion. And guess what else does that? People like Adolf Hitler and other despots, other leaders that appeal to a feeling, you know, and so it hijacks your logical faculties of reason, and you take that and you imprison it and shackle it to what makes you feel right or feel good. Now, one thing about like little history about, you know, Socrates, he was a soldier. He fought one time, so yeah, he was a soldier for Athens, you know, and stuff like that. And yeah, corrupting the youth. And so he feared democracy without education and wisdom could fail. That's what he feared. And that's what the best side that the Democrats have is like, okay, you have to have like free education and free healthcare. But the problem with that is really let the education be free. And I don't think it is. I think that there's a lot of there's still like some. The only reason why is it's become corporatized. Everything has become corporatized. But if you're like, I don't like how America has become corporatized, and so I'm going to vote for Trump to remedy the situation, you made a big mistake. And so with that, I will end this video. Thank you very much.